It's time for another episode of The Player and the Journalist, hosted by Karson Harris and David Vick. Karson is a former All-American at Drexel, the program's all-time leading goal scorer and the CAA's leader in draw controls. I'm a journalist covering women's lacrosse since 2019 and the founder of Lacrosse Extras. In this episode, we have a lot to talk about as we enter March. Holy! I am so glad we finally have an episode. Just me and Karson. Well, we do have a new member who we will introduce in 1 second, but me and Karson finally get to share our opinions, and you know we love to talk, so this is just amazing. Karson, today we are recording this on March the 3rd, excuse me. What are your thoughts as we are 1 month down? February is behind us.
Oh man, I mean, this month went by so fast. I went by really, really fast. We'll say that. I've been trying to catch as many games as I can. But it's crazy. We're like deeper into the season than it feels. I feel like I kind of keep waiting for the season to pick up, but like we're here and we're basically in the middle of it at this point. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it has gone by fast. There's been a lot of action. I feel like this has been, since I've been covering the sport for the last 5 years, I feel like the first month of this season has had the most action out of the last 5 years. I feel like there's been upsets. There's been UMass Lowell is 6-0. You have teams like that who are just coming out of nowhere. And so it's been super crazy. So anyways, before we get further into it, we have a new member to the team that we are super excited to welcome. She's been a supporter of the Player and the Journalist for a super long time now. Megan Blazewski is going to be our fact checker. So she will be known as Fact Checker Meg. So Megan, welcome to the show. She's been listening from the very beginning. We are super excited to have you on. So any words, Megan?
Yeah, as Dave said, I've been listening since the inception of the podcast, basically, and I've been correcting them. So when they're wrong, yeah, that's all.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited to have you, and we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a little bit of a learning lesson as far as if she corrects while we go live or at the end, but she's on the team and we're super thrilled. So with that being said, we will get into our first topic, teams that have impressed to begin 2024. Karson, you are up first.
Yes. My first one is Michigan. Because their schedule was their opening schedule was a little bit easier this season than it was last season. Like, I think they started out like, I don't know, not as good. They're 6-0 right now, I think. And so they played a little bit tougher competition last season, but starting out 6-0, like they just kind of haven't really been on my radar. I guess. I'm not sure why. I guess I feel like they've always just kind of been the team that's like middle ground, kind of consistent, loses the games they should, wins the games they shouldn't, or loses the games they should, wins the games they should. And coming out 6-0, they've already beat Denver, they've beaten USC, and they've beaten Colorado. Like Colorado ranked 19th when they beat them, USC ranked 13th, Denver ranked 4th. Like I think those are huge wins for a team like Michigan. Which is awesome for them. I think they could be really good. They're putting up a lot of goals. They play Maryland down the stretch here soon, and I think that'll be a really important game for them to kind of prove that they are top 5 level and that they kind of like these games haven't been a fluke and they really are here to stay through May. But yeah, they're my first team. I think that they've kind of caught us. They haven't even ever been on my radar at all. So like that's why I was looking through their schedule. I was like, wow, they're actually kind of popping off. So they're my first surprise of this year so far.
Yes, so Michigan, they've been very, very good so far. I think they are, as of this recording, number 6 in the IWLCA rankings, which is, who would have thought that coming into the season?
Yeah, U.S. Lacrosse, I think, has them in the top 5. I think they have them in, like, let me see. I think it's, like, literally number 4. Hold on. Maybe I'm wrong. Actually, I could be wrong about that.
I think you're right.
Oh, no, 5. They have them at 5.
Okay.
So,
I mean,
crazy.
Yeah, and who did they play today? I think they played today. I can't remember. Anyways, they're doing really good. It's been interesting. Their defense has been amazing and their offense has been good, but I would have thought if you were to have told me preseason Michigan's going to be number 5 or number 6 in the rankings after February, I would have been like, oh, it's going to be because of Jill Smith and their offense.
Yeah.
But their offense has just been, they've been good. They haven't been great. And so their defense, I know after the USC game, they had given up, I want to say 4 or less goals in every game this season, which
Yeah.
is insane. Which then they went and played Arizona State, which they gave up more goals for, which they should have lost that game. I'm just going to be honest. Arizona State led from start to almost finish. They controlled most of the game, and they just came up short at the end.
But under
yeah,
10, every opponent under 10 goals so far.
Yeah.
It's
So
Colorado with 8 too. So
yeah, that's who they played recently. I think it was Colorado. It was probably yesterday. Anyways, so yeah, Michigan they've been very impressive. Hopefully they can keep it up. The Big Ten is super deep this year. I've been super impressed with all of the Big Ten, minus Penn State. No hate, just being honest. So yeah, awesome. So Michigan, that's a great team, and we'll see. Last year they almost pulled off the upset against the future national champions in the first round against Northwestern. So we'll see what they can do this year. My first team
beat Maryland, to be honest. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you said what about Maryland?
I think they have it in them to beat Maryland.
I think they have it in them to beat anyone as long as their defense keeps playing good. But
yeah,
I'm gonna need a little more from one of my favorite players, Jill Smith. Okay, I'm gonna need a little more. So anyways, my first team is in Megan's neck of the woods. Okay, I believe they're in New Jersey. The Rider Broncs, not the Rider Broncos, the Rider Broncs. Okay, BRONCS. In their first season ever as a D1 team, they are 4-1. Started off 4-0, lost to Oregon last time out. It's not just their first season at the D1 level. It's their first season ever. Okay, obviously they haven't had the toughest schedule, but 4-1 in your first ever season, that is super impressive. It's hard to win, and it's hard to start off a program, especially at a small. It's not like they're Pitt or Clemson where they're going to be getting all these recruits because they're in the ACC. They're in a small. I don't even know what conference they're in, but they're in a small conference. I can tell you that much. So, shout out to the Rider Broncs. 4-1, like I said, best wins so far: 19-13 over St. Francis and 12-10 over Monmouth. And Monmouth, I'm a little high on Monmouth. Okay, they have Meg Dowdy as their defensive coordinator, so I'm a fan of Monmouth.
Yeah, we played when they I think they were in the CAA on my last year. Maybe it was the year after, but they're a quality team. Monmouth has some good. That's a solid team to beat for sure.
For sure. So that was an impressive win. I have a shout out for midfielder Katie Walsh, who is a redshirt sophomore, leads the team in goals, shooting 48.5%. He has 31 draw controls, 15 ground balls, both leading the team as well. She also leads the team in yellow cards, but we're not going to talk about that. Okay, we're all positive over here. Okay, but Katie Walsh has been amazing, and okay, they're in the MAC. I have that written down. That's what conference they're in. FYI, okay. The MAC. Okay, I think MAC play is going to be tough for them this year. I think once they get into conference play, it's going to be tough for them. But hey, by winning all these early season non-conference games, they're putting themselves in a position to potentially go 500 or even better in their first season, which is a big feat. I feel like no matter the level, you always want to be over 500. I feel like that's the minimum goals. So anyways, they are playing Old Dominion on March the 10th, which is a week from today, from when we're recording this. So that should be a fun game. Old Dominion, they're a fun team to watch. So the Rider Broncs, that's my first team that has impressed me.
That's a good one. I'm so happy for them. That's so fun. My second team is, and this isn't even a surprise because we've known it all along, but I had to talk about Notre Dame because
I thought you were about to say Drexel.
No. Notre Dame, because we knew it. We've been saying for years now that they have so much potential. They can do it. I literally picked them to win the ACC last year because they just have been so close for so long. I feel like both of us have been so high on Notre Dame and they just haven't been able to reach that next level where they're in competition against the top teams, and they've been right there. They've been into those games where it's within the last 5 minutes and they can't win. And they're winning this year. So it's not necessarily a surprise, but I'm just so happy and had to talk about them. And I feel like this was the section to do it. Like they lost to Syracuse, whatever. We're going to ignore that part because they
That was a close game.
Yeah, but like again, it was close. But that's kind of what they did, right? Like they always were in those like close games, but they never finished. But their like big three, their three-headed monster is like out to play this year. And I don't know if they're all graduating this year, but they're playing like it. I think they are.
I think they're all fifth years.
Yeah, I think, and they're playing like it. Like I got to watch their game against Northwestern, and it was crazy. Like they just couldn't. They looked so hot. Like they looked so on in everything they were doing.
They faced a lot of adversity in that game. Northwestern would tie it, would bring it back within one, and every time Notre Dame would respond.
Right, and that's just not something that's happened in the past. Like I feel like that's happened, and then in the last 5 minutes, like they've let the team pull away and they've lost. And I feel like the thing that's changed this year is like I don't know exactly. Obviously, I'm not on the team, but I feel like they are so confident. Like you're not like, oh, I hope Notre Dame pulls off this upset. It's like, oh, this is going to be a great game, and I don't know who's the underdog in this situation. I feel like they're kind of entering it like that this year instead of being like, oh, I hope we can beat Northwestern. Oh, I hope we can beat North Carolina. They're going into it like, no, we can beat Northwestern. We can beat North Carolina. And I feel like you can see that confidence on the field. And it does just kind of seem like that three-headed monster, like they're playing with chips on their shoulders. And I'm really excited to see what they do in the next, like in the season. And I'm really hoping it continues through like the ACC championship because I have loved the way they played for so long. It would be awesome if they could like, if they win the ACC, we're going to take what I said last year and we're just going to put it on this year because I the 1 year I give up on them, they freaking come out and pop off. Whatever, it's fine.
Okay, I do have a question. You picked them to win the ACC last year, but didn't you then later say that was on accident?
No, it wasn't on accident. I just forgotten about Syracuse because then I ranked Syracuse in the thing. There was something about Syracuse. I'd forgotten about it, but I still picked them to win the ACC because I'm not confident in them.
So yeah, so I definitely will have more thoughts on their game against Northwestern later, but what I will say about that game now is they wanted it so bad. Every single play, whether it was a ground ball or caused turnover, they were celebrating as if it were a goal. Like every little thing meant so much to them in that game. It was so crazy to see. And also, what's also impressive about them, I just said also twice, I'm sorry. Not only did they beat Northwestern, they just beat North Carolina, and they did it in two different ways. They beat Northwestern by outscoring the best offense, in my opinion, in the country. They went and beat North Carolina by holding them to 5 goals. I want to say 7-5. So that's 2 huge wins, and they did it in 2 different ways, which is huge because come postseason time, you're not always going to be on your best offensively or your best defensively. You're going to have to win multiple ways. You have to be diverse in that regard, and they've shown that. Yeah, they lost to Syracuse, but I'm not worried about that. I think that was a must-win game for Syracuse, honestly. So I think Syracuse really had to have that game. So I'm not worried about that at all. So I honestly think you probably disagree with me on this, and I totally understand if you do. I kind of feel like the North Carolina win was bigger than the Northwestern win just because they always lose to North Carolina. It seems like they play them every year. So they got over that hump of beating North Carolina. And not only that, they got over that hump after losing to Syracuse. So they battled back from that regard. So obviously beating the number 1 team in the country is bigger in terms of rankings, but I just feel like mentally and how they had to fight back and they were on the road, I just feel like it was a huge win for them against North Carolina.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you in the sense that like it was the second time. You beat Northwestern, then you lose to Syracuse and North Carolina, and it's like, okay, you beat Northwestern, like fluke, right? But like beating North Carolina kind of helps boost that resume of like, no, we're actually this good. Like we are actually we're here to stay this year. And so I can agree with you in that sense for sure.
Also, I don't think they trailed at all. I think they were tied for a little bit, but I don't think they trailed at all against North Carolina, which is crazy. I want to say they went up a few goals early, then Carolina came back to tie it, and then they scored a few goals in the 3rd or the 4th, and I don't think North Carolina led it all in that game, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I only got to see the end of it, but I do think that the whole time I was watching, they were up. So
yeah,
and North Carolina could like barely close, like they would get within 1 and then go out down again by like 2 or 3.
Yeah. So, anyways, Notre Dame great for the sport. We were talking about this. I was like, I think Notre Dame should be ranked number 1 after they beat Northwestern. Obviously, then they lost and then they won again, but they're definitely a top 5 team, no doubt about it. And they've proven they can beat anyone. So they're going to be fun to watch as the season continues. Hopefully, they make a postseason run. That'll be great for the sport.
Oh my God, I
Great
hope
for the
so.
sport.
I would be so happy. I don't know why I love them so much. I don't know why, but that would be
I
awesome.
know. I've never seen you smile this much other than when we had your former teammate Corinne Bednarik on the show.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I love them. I just want them to do well. I like the way they play. I'm a fan of their style, I think. It's great.
Very cool. Also, we hope to have Madison Ahern on the show later this season. Fingers crossed. Anyways, moving on to my second team. So this is a team that's been talked about a lot by me on this show for both good and bad. But I've got the Yale Bulldogs. I have been super impressed. Talk about another team I want to see make a postseason run. Out of the Ivy League, okay. Give me the Yale Bulldogs. Okay. 4-0 start for the second time in 3 years. And unlike when they did it in 2022, I think they're going to go 5-0 by beating UConn coming up. And then they have I forget who they're playing their 6th game, but I think they have a really good chance to be 6-0 going into a March 17th game at Rutgers. Imagine that.
Connecticut State, who they play for their 7-0. So very possible.
They're going to beat them. No, win by default. Okay. I think if they are 7-0 going into Rutgers and they beat that Rutgers team, who is much better this year, also they've impressed me. I think Yale, also that's a huge game for them because if they don't win the Ivy League, they're going to have to get an at-large bid. And so beating a Big Ten team that's ranked on the road would be huge for that. So yeah,
True.
the Yale Bulldogs.
That's a good answer. I'll be curious. I feel like they're always up there, battling for the Ivy League between them, Penn, Stanford. I feel like that's kind of right? In recent years, Princeton used to be up there, but they haven't really been up there as much anymore. But
yes. So actually, it's funny you mentioned Princeton because Yale just beat them. And not only did they beat them on the road, it was their first win at Princeton. You want to guess the year, Karson?
2008.
Way further back.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
It was their first win at Princeton since April 16th, 1988.
Wow.
Anytime we can get an 80s reference in the show, we're going to do it, okay? Shout out to Yale for giving us this potential, okay? Yeah, that is absolutely insane. It's also the first time they've won 3 in a row against Princeton in the series since, I want to say, the 80s as well. So, yeah. So what I'm going at is not only are they 4-0 for the second time in 3 years, their confidence has to be at an all-time high. They started off strong last year, like we talked about. Taylor Everson got injured. The program went through a lot. They fell down the stretch and came within a pipe of going to the NCAA tournament nonetheless against Penn in the conference championship. So anyways, they came from behind to beat Stanford in an absolutely gnarly, wild, crazy fourth quarter in their season opener. It was so crazy. If you haven't seen the highlights, they're on Lacrosse Extras. Absolutely insane fourth quarter comeback. Then they handled Temple, who's talk about a respectable team. Temple's always respectable. They handled them on the road 13-5, I want to say it was.
Yeah.
Then they went 3-0. They went on the road and beat Princeton to get to 4-0. This team, there's just something special about this team. Okay, I do have a few things I want to get to that they need to improve on, but the Yale Bulldogs, they've also got some very nice uniforms, let me say. I think they're new this year. They're very nice. I have some more facts for you because I just have to keep raving. The Bulldogs have outshot their opponents in 3 of their 4 games this year. Only one they did not was against Stanford. They still came back to win. Talk about talent. Jenna Kalignan, who is one of my favorite players in the country. Okay, absolute beast. She might be I don't know if she'll be a first-team All-American unless Yale goes undefeated maybe because I feel like to be a first-team All-American if you're not in the ACC, you have to over earn that just because, which is dumb. But anyways,
break records.
Yeah. So Jenna Kalignan, Molly McGuckin on defense has been great. Taylor Lane has been killing it at the draw. Taylor Everson on attack. Sky Carasquillo. I love saying that name, Carasquillo. This team has the talent. What are your thoughts on Yale?
I think those are all fair. I think that the Ivy League is kind of starting to get its feet back. I feel like we talked about this when we like did our rankings, is that like they kind of hit the biggest blow after COVID with not allowing like the fifth years to come back and everything. And I feel like they're kind of all starting to get their feet back from underneath of them. And it would be really cool after the Everson thing to have them, like, I'm sure it kind of gave them something to like rally around, but it's hard to like reset your mind after something like that happens in the middle of a season. So like there could be some waterfall effects from that happening as well. But I feel like I think the Ivy League will give them a run for their money. Obviously, like I don't think any of it is smooth sailing, but they've put up, I can't find their total shots, but I mean, yeah, that Jenna girl's producing like over 5 shots on goal a game.
Yeah,
like,
that Jenna girl's a beast.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that they've got a good chance of going far. I think it would be nice to see them make a run into the tournament for sure. But obviously a long way to go before that.
For sure. So I know we got to keep things moving along, but just two more things from Yale. They need to be better on the free position shots. They're 5 of 20. That's not good. And they need to get better goalie play. They've started 2 goalies so far. They've played 3 total ones. They've got to get better play from their goalies and convert at a high rate at the free position. And if they do those 2 things, they're going to be dangerous. But yeah, those are our 4 teams that have impressed to begin 2024. Moving on to topic number 2, thoughts on the new rules in action. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but obviously going into the season, neither one of us were super thrilled about the rule changes. Neither one of us were thrilled before they even made the rule changes. Although I will say it has not been as bad as I thought it was going to be. I will say that. But that's not how we should measure rules, by them not being as bad as we thought they were going to be. Anyways, there have not been as many goals scored as I would have expected. I thought the goal totals were going to go through the roof, and that has not been the case, which I think is good, because one of the concerns I had with more goals being scored is that it would reduce the importance of each goal. And so I'm glad that the goal scoring has not been through the roof. With that being said, I do want to pull up what I believe is the most goals scored this season. Today, Northwestern beat Central Michigan by a football score. Do you want to guess the score, Karson?
By a football score?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. 28-5.
5? I guess like if there was a safety, yes. That you're actually very close. 27-3.
I thought just Northwestern had one. What was it?
27-3.
Ah, 27's. That's a hard. Yeah. Oh, I guess field goals. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, get some field goals in there. Okay. So other than that, I mean, the scoring hasn't been super crazy. Florida looks like they put up 22 today against Arizona State. Little hangover for Arizona State. Binghamton put up 22 on Campbell, but for the most part, like, I feel like the scores have been normal or like equivalent to what they were last year. So that's a plus. I'm happy about that. A million green cards. I don't know how else to say it. There's just been a million green cards. It's been ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the reason we haven't seen the goals shoot up as much is because like man up, man down was always like practicing man down was never really you didn't do that very often. Like you did it every once in a while. Like we probably practiced man down situations. We practiced man down situations when we were practicing man up situations, but the coaching was focused on the man up part. You know what I mean? Like you focused on how the offense was running during your man up situational practice, whereas like the defense was kind of there to mimic man down defense. But like very rarely did you practice your man down defense as what you were doing. And I feel like probably with these new rules, like that tightened up a lot. Like people probably actually started putting like real effort into those, because Pete girls are flying around right now in the 8, like defensively. It looks a lot more organized from a lot more teams. I feel like people have always some people have always been better at it than others, but I do feel like it looks a lot more organized, and I think it's probably because the importance of it has gone up, so therefore the coaching of it and the repetitions in practice have probably also gone up. But I agree with you that it's not as bad as I thought. People are kind of just like, oh shoot, okay, running off the field, and it kind of gets started again. Like there's just, it's, I guess because it's not as big of a deal. It's not as like, okay, stop. Like they blow the whistle, the girl looks at her like shoot, and then runs off the field. So it's not as taking as long, which I think is good. My issue with it is that I'm surprised you didn't bring this up because you had such a big issue with flopping last year that I think it's made that 10 times worse. Like girls are just falling to the ground. Like you get hit and you're going down. I'm sorry. Like a cross check to the body doesn't knock you down. It doesn't every time. Now there are really, really aggressive ones that do. And sometimes you are running full speed and you get hit from the side and you're falling down. But like not frequently. That doesn't happen frequently. And bodies are just hitting the floor this year. Like
the bodies hit the floor.
Literally, I'm like, get up, you're fine. Like, and I mean, but of course they're doing it. Like you know me, like I'm not anti-flopping. Like if you're gonna get the call, get the call. But like, it's gotten out of hand. And then it's like, oh my god, these are ridiculous. And you're like, bro, she could just stand up. Like it's not that big. And it takes away from the ones that are actually a big deal, you know, because there are some that are really aggressive and that poor girl got her butt kicked. But like there's this one where these girls are running across the top of the gate just like flying backward, and I'm all for flying backward, but don't fall down. Like don't, that's just too embellishment for me. Like flop, bend in half, grab your head, I don't care, but like you don't go down. You're stronger than that. Like I think that's kind of where I like. And my other biggest concern is honestly the yellow cards in open fields, because I think those are getting out of hand too in terms of flopping. Like those are not all dangerous plays. Like I think yellow cards should be given for dangerous plays, and those aren't dangerous. Girls are just hitting people. The other girls are falling down and they're running off the field. Like it's not even, I don't know. Those are the ones that really bother me, honestly. More than any of them are the open field fouls that are resulting in yellow cards, because I think about 30% of them are probably real yellow cards, and the rest of them are just like flops to the ground, to be honest.
So yes, a lot of thoughts on that. I feel like yes, I have seen some flopping. I want to say I can't remember if it's supposed to be a green or a yellow card for flopping. I think I've only seen one that's been called this season.
They won't ever call it. But the thing again is like, I am not anti-flopping. I want to make that very clear.
Oh, I am.
But they won't ever call it, because especially now that the whole like safety is like the number one thing. So they won't ever they're never going to be the one to say that wasn't as aggressive as you made it look. You know, which is fine. I'm also for that. But
well, we'll just wait till we get a real obvious flop. We're gonna post about it. Just anyway. I'm gonna be like, yo, ref, what are you looking at? Okay, anyways. What was I about to say? Okay, so yes, I don't feel like the flopping's been out of control. I honestly haven't really noticed it a lot. With that being said, I'm gonna have to call out Madison Taylor. She's one of the best players in the country, and she's too good to be flopping. If you watch the Northwestern Boston College game, she flopped 2 or 3 times late in the fourth quarter, and her goggles are coming off, and she's like throwing up her arms. And I'm like, seriously, it's not a flop. I mean, it's not a foul. You're flopping. And luckily for her, hopefully this will be a deterrent from her and for really anyone doing it. Both of them resulted in turnovers because she flopped, lost the ball, and didn't get the call. So anyways, Madison Taylor, I'm a huge fan. You're too good to be flopping. You're one of the best players in the country. Okay, anyways.
Yeah, I think for the open field ones, to be honest. Those are my biggest. And I'm actually okay with them being fouls. It's just that like to get a yellow card from that seems silly.
Yeah.
Especially because it's so hard to defend an open field. Like, it's already tough to have a girl running full speed at you with the entire field to like beat you, you know? So it's like, it's already hard. Now if I hit her, it's a yellow. Like, that's kind of, I don't love that.
Yeah. I mean, well, that kind of goes into one of my points that I was going to make, is that the ride still exists, but it's at a much lesser level.
Yeah, which I don't really like.
Yeah, because I love the ride. I think that's was one of the most exciting parts of the game, because if you get a turnover on the ride, like that just juices up the whole team. I love the ride, and I know I'm not alone in feeling like, look, we've lost a great part of our game by all the green cards. And you also have, I've noticed in a few broadcasts, the commentators have pointed this out, that I don't know the exact rule, but the green cards are given out in between the 30s at an extremely high rate. So you'll have players, especially when they're trying to protect the ball late, they'll run past the 30s, so out of the offensive zone, they'll run into the 30s, so they get a green card and they go man up. And it's so dumb. I'm like yes, they're using the rules to their advantage, which props to them, but like the green cards getting handed out is just ridiculous. And I don't think so much of it is flopping. Like, yes, there's flopping, but I feel like more of it is because, like, with the safety, the refs are just giving out so many cards.
Honestly, it's probably that. Like the flopping, I don't think flopping has increased, but it's the flopping now results in a worser. Like people have always flopped to get the foul, and I'm again okay with that. So it's maybe less the flopping that I have a problem with, and more the fact that now that flopping is resulting in such a larger offense. You know what I mean? Like now they're flopping and getting a yellow card out of it, whereas before it was just like flopping and you're on the 8. You know, maybe it's more that is my problem with it.
Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, it's been a small sample size, but I feel like I've kind of seen enough of the green cards in that regard. So it'll be interesting to see how the rules or how the season plays out. And then I think I think the biggest way we'll get a change in the rules for the better is if something, and this is unfortunate, but is if something bad happens, like there's just an awful green card given out in the Final Four or the national championship, and it's on a huge stage where everyone sees it and everyone knows that such a terrible call and it has an influence on the outcome of the game. Which I hope we don't get to that point, because we don't need rules affecting the outcome of our Final Four and championship. But if that happens, I think that can be what is the catalyst to tweak the rules for the better.
Yeah, it's possible they also kind of are like, okay, we rolled out too many. Like we might be able to find like a happy medium between we have now and what we had last year. Like I'm okay with like a little happy medium too that they might be able to reach on their own. Like that feels like a possibility as well, I think.
And I think the game is safer this year. I feel like that has been a plus.
Yeah, for sure.
So I do think peel back some of the green cards, but I feel like in terms of the safety aspect, they have made progress. And just one last thing for me, with all the green cards and all the cards in general and all the stoppages in play, I feel like I don't have the data on this to back it up, but I feel like a lot more games are going north of 2 hours this year than in the past. And that's not just games that are on ESPN. They have all the commercial breaks. Of course, those are going to go over 2 hours, but I'm talking about games with no commercial breaks going over 2 hours. And that's a little, I feel like over 2 hours is a little long in my opinion. So
yeah, no, that's fair. I did think they were going to be like 4 though, so it is better than what I think it is than what I was anticipating.
For sure. Any final thoughts before we move on to our next topic?
No, I don't think so.
We will move on. We have the strengths and weaknesses of our national championship picks. And I would just go ahead and say the weakness for Karson's pick before she gets started is that they're down like half their team. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I picked North Carolina prior to them losing everyone. Released the day before we realized they lost everyone. Slightly more unfortunate for me. Although if that was going to happen, I'm not surprised it happened to me. That is my timing is never my friend. But I do have to say I picked them, and I originally, when I heard that Chloe Humphrey was down, I was like, that's okay, because they play as a team. Like North Carolina's strength, they didn't have any firepower last year. They had firepower, but they had even firepower. They didn't have like that, like the it girl, you know? And I was like, that's fine, because they're going to play as a team. The whole team scores goals. Like that is your North Carolina's MO. So I was like, okay, it's fine. All going to be okay. Now it hasn't been okay, but they are playing as a team. That is still one of their strengths. They still are spreading the ball really well across like all players.
Kind of have to.
Yeah, I mean you do. But they're doing it well. Like a lot of teams aren't fortunate enough to have that many people that can step up and score goals. Like if you were to lose one or two of your top players, your other ones they don't know how to pick up the slack, And North Carolina is kind of, Jenny Levy is like amazing coach, and the fact that North Carolina is always they're hard to stop because they have so much firepower. They don't have that like one star. I do think they need that star this year, but they had 9 goal scorers in their win against Florida and 5 in their loss to Notre Dame. So they had 5 goal scorers for 5 goals. Now the problem is we need those 5 goal scorers to start scoring multiple goals. Like we can't have 1 or 2 people step up for 1 or 2 minutes in a game. Like all 5 of those people, all 9 of those people, whatever it is, have to like step up together. And I did think besides their loss to JMU, their defense is still performing well, even with Brooklyn Walker-Welch, which I was a little bit concerned about initially, especially because they did lose Chloe Humphrey, that like for them to win games, the other team can't go out and score 15, 16 goals a game. Like that wasn't going to work for them. And I think they kept them to under 10, at least close, the rest of their opponents besides JMU. So I do think those are their strengths, is that their defense is still functioning as a unit. And they are still a team. They're still playing as a team. I think their weaknesses start with just like not looking super gritty. They're kind of out there running around, and I don't mean to minimize them obviously because they're still an amazing team, but I think that they're struggling to show that they want it. Like I don't think you're watching them right now, and kind of like you said again with Notre Dame, like they look like they won it. They were fighting every single ground ball, every single thing. They were celebrating. Like that was a big deal to them. And I'm not really getting the same energy from North Carolina, regardless of like their goals. They're hyping up their goals, but like they're not scoring enough of those for that to carry them through an entire game, in my opinion. So I think that they kind of just need to start like really celebrating the small things, really starting to look gritty and kind of get like a chip on their shoulder, which North Carolina as a school is not used to having. They are normally the school that just goes out there and wins things because they're North Carolina. Kind of just happened with our basketball team last year, and now they're out winning again. I think that kind of has to happen to teams. You look like you want to say something. Do you want to say something?
Yes, they're not as bad as their basketball team was last year. They're still a top 10. Well, they might not be top 10 after this next loss, but what I was going to say about the chip on their shoulder is I feel like this is the first time that I can remember that they've lost 2 games in the first month of the season. And so who knows, maybe that chip will be on their shoulder. And if it's not, with every loss that gets added on, at some point it's got to click. At some point, the motivation, I'm not saying they're not motivated, but at some point, I feel like there's a difference between like being motivated to win and being tired of losing. And so I feel like at some point, their entire team, they're used to winning. Like that's just what they do. They're used to winning. So I feel like at some point they're gonna. I think they're gonna be a dangerous team no matter what. But they're just not doing the little things right. Throwing the ball away. Like what are we doing? That's not North Carolina lacrosse.
Yeah, that's kind of how I agree. Like that's kind of how I feel too. I feel like they just aren't. They're kind of going out there and being like, well, we'll win. It'll click. We'll figure it out. And they're just not. So like something's gonna have to change for that to turn around this season, I think. And then my kind of sticking with like the little things, I think and you mentioned that like people aren't scoring on man up as frequently as we expected them to, but they have 5 man up goals in a total of 29 minutes being man up. And that's excluding Liberty and High Point, because they like, I think the thing with the man up is like when the games are a bigger deficit, people are more frequently scoring on their man up, but it's when it's like close games is when those man up things aren't really being capitalized as well. So I took out Liberty and High Point from that because I thought it like unfairly skewed it. But yeah, 5 man up goals in 29 minutes of being man up. I think they had 1 goal against Notre Dame man up within 11 minutes of being man up. Like that's brutal. And I know it's kind of a widespread thing, but that's like, that's just not, I think that's a reflection of like not doing the little things and not being truly locked in every second of the game, because that's really not great.
Yeah, Jenny Levy, she wanted these man up opportunities. And also, this is not something that's new. North Carolina was not good on their woman up last year either. They were, so I don't know what's going on with North Carolina's woman up unit, but this is 2 years in a row where obviously we're still early in the season, but last year they were poor. And you just said it. they're poor again. So
Yeah.
what I would like to see from North Carolina is get Riley Casey the ball more often. I think part of the problem with North Carolina is they have so many people that just want, I don't want to say just want to pass, but you have Ashley Humphrey, who's one of the best feeders in America. You have Caitlin Wurzberger, who's a feeder. I feel like you need to have someone on the offense that's just going to let it rip. And Riley Casey is that person, but she's not getting a lot of playing, or not getting enough playing time. She's not even, last year she started on attack. This year they're subbing her on as an offensive midi. They need to keep her on the field, and they need to let her, give her the green light to shoot it whenever. Is she going to take a lot of shots? Yeah. Is she going to miss them? Yeah, but she's also going to score some. So I think they need to get Riley Casey more involved in offense.
Yeah. No, I agree, because I really do think that's what they're missing. Like I said, like they had five people score a goal each in the Notre Dame game. Like they need somebody to start putting up 3 or 4 a game. That's the only way you win games, really. Like,
Right.
Especially against people who are that good. Like,
and
people scoring 1 goal is not going to be enough.
Yeah, and the reason I think they need to put Riley Casey on attack, it's different. There's just a different mindset when you are a starter and you're on the field 24/7 than when you're subbing on and off. In my opinion, she needs to be on the field 24/7, and I just think they need more from her. And if they don't get more from her, which it's not her fault, they need to give her the opportunity to do more. So, anyways, keeping this thing moving, Northwestern, their strengths, offense, experience. Okay. A few things, and then we'll move on to our final segment. They're no longer the hungriest team in the country, and that's not anything that they did. It's just, I mean, winning the national championship will do that to you. And you mentioned this preseason, so yes, you did.
Thank you.
And so, like, going back to that Notre Dame game, like, it was a very close game. Northwestern could have easily won it. But at no point in that game did it seem like Northwestern wanted it more than Notre Dame. And maybe that's just because Notre Dame was like, it seemed like over the top that they wanted it so badly, because they wanted it so badly. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Northwestern handles that. Obviously, they can still go win a national championship. Just because you're the hungriest team doesn't mean you're the best team. I mean, just because you're the hungriest team doesn't mean you're going to win it all. Case in point, Boston College. So it'll be interesting. Second off, their turnovers. They're entering today against Central Michigan. I'm sure they had less today because it was lesser competition. Average 17.4 turnovers per game. That's not very good.
Jeez.
So yeah, so you got to clean that up if you're Northwestern. Second off, My Law Liberty has very much struggled this season. Save percentage at 39.2%. So I expect her to be better, but they're definitely beatable. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So they're beatable, but overall, I still think they're in the best situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about the good teams like North Carolina, Northwestern, Boston College, all of those teams, they have the strength, right? Like they have the best players in the country on their team. So like as the season progresses, there's no reason why they can't progress as well. And so it'll be interesting to see like later down the stretch, the teams who can pull through and get better will be the teams that end up, I think, like in your Final Four. Because they all are definitely facing trouble now. So
some more than others, a la your national championship. So also, just real quick before we move on, so Northwestern obviously just beat Boston College. And going into that game, I had a conversation with someone, and I told them, I was like, I think it'll be better for the longevity of Northwestern's season if they lose this game, just because then it'll be like, okay, eyes are open now. We can't just like show up and beat everyone. We actually have to play. And they controlled that Boston College game. Obviously, quarters 2 through 4 were pretty even. They jumped out to I think it was 7-1 lead in the first quarter, but they controlled that game. And at no point did it feel like they were in trouble in that game. And it was an extremely impressive win in some brutally cold weather on the road against Boston College. I mean, that was a very impressive win. So shout out to my national championship. Okay. Awesome. Moving on to our final topic. We will now predict the over-under regular season win totals for 5 different teams. So we have Brown, Michigan, Oregon, Stony Brook, and UMass. And before we get into them, just for a little explanation, in case people are not familiar with over/under win totals, so it's kind of a betting thing. Obviously, we're not putting any money on it, but that's why when we do these, it'll be 10.5 wins, 13.5 wins. It won't be 10 or 13 because you can't go if it's 10, for example, you can hit it and you won't go over/under, you just hit it. But if it's 10.5, 13.5, you're either going to be over/under. So you got to be we're either going to be right or wrong. There's no being in between. Okay, awesome. So starting off with Brown. Head coach Katrina Dowd. She's got them playing good. They got a big win earlier in the season. They are currently, let me pull this up. Also, Karson, you're going first, FYI. So
Okay.
Brown is currently 3-1 with 11 games left. This is regular season wins, remember. Over under 10.5 wins for the Brown, whatever their mascot is.
The Browns, I think. I think they're literally brown. I said over, but close. Like I said over, they'll have 11 wins.
Okay. See, that's what makes this fun. And I strategically picked these.
Yeah, you did good with your line. Your line was really good.
Yo, Las Vegas, you trying to hire me? Okay, anyway. So at first I had over, but then I changed to under just because the Ivy League is super tough. They did just lose a really close game to Harvard over the weekend. Wicked smart. Okay, and that's my terrible Boston accent. And it's gonna be very close. I just think the Ivy League is gonna be a little too tough for them. But
I had them beating Princeton or Penn. I had them going 1-1 in those back to back. I think that's probably where that's where I ended up with 11 instead of having to lose both those games. I had them either beat Princeton or Penn, lose to Yale.
And Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it'll be good. It'll be good. So anyway, so Karson has the over and she's going with 11 wins. I've got the under, and we'll see. Okay, moving on to Michigan. Carson's one of her impressive teams. Okay. Also, we are definitely going to revisit this segment because I love this segment. Okay, just saying. Anyways, Michigan, they are currently 6-0 with 10 games left in the regular season. Over or under 13.5 wins.
I had under. I had them at 13. Yeah, I'm telling you, your lines are really good for what I was picking.
So I also have them under, but it's going to be very close. Very close.
Oh, I agree.
I have them losing to Northwestern and Maryland, which they could easily beat one of those. Higher chance of it being Maryland. But if they win one of those two games, they're going to go over.
Yeah.
So I have, even if they lose both of those games, they could still go over. But in my opinion, I have them going under because I think they will lose to either Rutgers, Penn, or Johns Hopkins. I think they will lose one of those three games.
That's what I was just about to say. I think that Hopkins, Penn State, and Rutgers, those are all three solid teams. Like, it's hard to even win out. Like, those are the kind of games like, oh, you should win, but it doesn't mean you're going to win kind of games. Like, so I wouldn't be surprised if I had them losing one of those two, I think.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Moving on to Oregon. They are currently 4-1, 9 games remaining, over under 8.5 wins in the regular season.
I had over at 9.
Ooh. I have over as well.
Hey, look at that. We're actually agreeing, kind of.
It's going to be very close, though. Honestly, it would not surprise me if they ended up at like 6 or 7.
Yeah, no, I gave them all the games they should win, and I didn't give them games that they shouldn't. Like, I kind of went pretty, like, USC, Arizona State, Colorado should lose those. Stanford, they should lose those. And then I gave them Merrimack, Furman, California, UC Davis, San Diego State. I was like, I think that's kind of what I ended up doing with that one. So they could very easily lose one of those like games that I considered like a gimme game.
I think if it comes down to one game, it's going to come down to their UC Davis game, which I think UC Davis is better. But I mean, you don't play the games on paper, you play them on the field. Upsets happen all the time. I definitely think, like you said, Cal, they should win. San Diego State is probably the worst coached team I've ever seen. So I think that, I'm sorry, but it's true. They are so it is just awfully coached. So I think Oregon, I think they're going over, but I'm not the most confident in that one. Okay, 2 teams left. Stony Brook, currently 4-0. Hold on, hold on. Hold your water there, big fella. Stony
go ahead.
Brook is currently 4-0. 13 games left in the regular season. Over under 14.5 wins.
Over.
Oh,
I
confident
was
Karson.
confident. I was confident in this one. I was, because I think they will lose to Syracuse. But I feel like they'll beat Denver
I
because
agree.
they are well coached. Like, I think that they're smart. They have a lot of firepower and they're well coached. So I think that they could get around Denver's defense. So I gave them Denver. And then if you give them Denver, then it's over, even if they win or lose to Stanford, I think. So that's why I picked over.
Yes, so I also have over. But unlike you, I have a caveat. So their next game is against Syracuse, which is going to be, I believe, the night this podcast drops. So this podcast drops Tuesday morning. I believe that's Tuesday night. I think if they beat Syracuse, they're going over. If they lose to Syracuse, I think they're going under. So I think this hinges on the Syracuse game.
Why? Do you think? Because so then if they lose to Syracuse, but then they win out all but one, they still go over, I think. 5, 6, 7.
Karson, you can't put me on the spot. I don't have that in my notes. I just have, if they lose to Syracuse, I think they're going under. But I think they're going over.
That could be a season changing loss. I'll buy it. I'll buy in. Sure.
Oh, okay, okay, I have it. Okay, so I have their schedule pulled up. So if they lose to Syracuse, then they still have Johns Hopkins, Denver, Rutgers. They still have and Stanford.
Yeah.
So those are 4 tough games. I think they have to beat Syracuse.
All right, that's fair. I gave them Rutgers and Denver and Hopkins.
So yeah, I mean,
I was allowing for one loss between Stanford, Rutgers, Denver, and Hopkins is what I was doing.
And what about your Drexel Dragons?
Listen, I love my Drexel Dragons. But Stony Brook is a good team.
Okay, awesome. Last team before we wrap up this podcast. Okay, UMass. Talk about a team with a rough start. Okay, they did just get in the win column, but it wasn't pretty. They played LIU, who is not very good, and it was a 1-goal game at the half. Maybe they pulled away in the second half. But UMass currently 1-3, 12 games left in the regular season. Over under 9.5 wins.
I gave them over.
Ooh.
But I'm re-looking at it. Yeah, because I gave them Dartmouth, George Mason, LaSalle, St. Bonaventure, Davidson, Duquesne. But I gave them UMass Lowell. That's where I was just thinking that if they don't pull that out, because now they're doing really well this season, right?
They're 6-0. It hasn't been against the toughest schedule. I do think UMass should be the better team, but UMass Lowell. I'm assuming it's a rivalry game. They're both. Yeah. So I mean, it's at UMass Lowell.
So I went over, but if they lose that one, it could be under. That's my take.
So this one, I went under for the sole reason that I think 2 things are catching up to. Well, I think one thing is catching up to UMass, and I think a second thing is hurting them. Amy Moreau no longer there. She was a leader for them for many years. She graduated. Also, something that I feel like didn't get a whole lot of attention in the lacrosse world is that their head coach. So their head coach currently is in her 2nd season. If this webpage will load, I will have the name of their previous head coach. Let me see. Okay, Angela McMahon Serpone. So she stepped down after the 2022 season because I believe the reason why she wanted to spend more time with her family. So she went from being a head coach at UMass, had them winning their conference every year, very respectable every year. She stepped down to become a high school coach. And so, and so Jana Drummond, who was an assistant, became the head coach. And I just feel like, I don't know what it is. I feel like last year, whenever you take over a team and you're in your first year, it's still the previous head coach's team. Like everything is built for you pretty much. And so they were good last year as they should have been. And I just feel like this year They lost to Holy Cross for the first time, and I want to say it was 15 years. Holy Cross is an improved team. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't have a lot of faith in them.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm going under. So we agreed on 2 of the 5, correct?
I thought it was 3. You
We
said Oregon
agreed.
over, Michigan under, right? And Stony Brook over?
Oh, you had Michigan under as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so we agreed on 3 of the 5. That's a great way to end the episode, Karson, in agreement. You know, we have to end on a good note, or else Karson will be mad at me for 2 weeks, you know. So anyways, Megan, fact checker Meg, do you have any, did we make any mistakes? I hope the answer is no. I really do hope the answer is no.
You only made one, and it was Dave who made it. So BC actually, the first half was 7-2. You said 7-1.
Oh, okay. Hey, that's what she is here for. She is here to keep us honest, okay? So thank you, Meg,
You're welcome.
for correcting us and for being one of only 2 people that have ever called me Dave on this podcast. The other being Kirsten Kimmel, head coach at Duke. Only 2 people that have ever called me Dave. Okay. So anyways, thank you very much to fact checker Meg. We are super excited to have her on, and she's going to be a great addition. So yes, that is a wrap on episode 38 of The Player and the Journalist. Did you enjoy this episode of The Player and the Journalist? If so, please leave us a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.